All right, Michael Gottlieb and Paul Townsend are criminal defense attorneys, two awesome lawyers to have on the show to break this case down. Welcome, gentlemen. And Paul, let me start with you. What are you thinking so far? I mean, the last time we talked, there was a very slow and methodical progress of the prosecution's case because they had to put in numerous items of evidence, but some people found it quote unquote boring. I don't, but some do. But now we're getting into the substance of this case. How powerful was this tape the prosecutor played in terms of proving the prosecution's case, if at all?
I think it's very powerful. I agree with you. A lot of lay people tend to get a little bit bored or hung up on the kind of nitty gritty that the prosecutor has to go through to introduce certain pieces of evidence that they plan on commenting about later. But the actual act of putting it all in can be very methodical and kind of come across as boring. But things like this video are really kind of gripping. And as you see the officer speaking to Kevin Eastman, and going through, showing him, this is her getting into your car. We know where your car went. And you see his reaction when they say, we found her at the burn pit. And he is stoic. He does not emote. He doesn't move. He doesn't flinch. A jury is going to look at that. And one conclusion they can draw is he's not surprised. He's not at all surprised because he knows exactly the condition she was in because that's how he left her. The defense is free to argue that it was shock. He had no idea how to react, and that's just kind of how he is, how he emotes. But I think a jury is more likely to look at that and say the lack of surprise or aghast expression is proof for them that he knew exactly how she was before they laid it out for him.
Yeah, Paul, to that point, and again, we can go back and forth with these things. There were a number of things that I saw that I was concerned about keeping my prosecutorial hat on with regard to this, which is including at a certain point, they got him saying, well, I don't know if I did this. I guess I must have blanked out. Maybe I don't have a memory of it. It kind of gets into that territory. I'm not saying here, but, a false confession where people sit there and say, well, I must have done it. They're telling me I did it. They're showing me all this stuff. I don't remember it. I thought that was a unique phrase that I think the defense is going to be able to grab onto, that he's just starting to manufacture things in order to accommodate what it is that the police want him to say. And let me last point, Paul, before you respond, when they're basically saying to him, hey, we know the victim's no good. He's a terrible person. We're on your side, kind of, why don't you just let us, tell us the story, that could force a person to say, let me tell them what it is they want. I get it. I could be a suspect, but if I tell them what I want, maybe I won't be.
Yeah, I think in this particular era, we are so attuned to false confessions. We're so attuned to police tactics. The police are not held in the highest esteem in our country right now. And a lot of the ways that they interrogate suspects might make some people uncomfortable. And a good defense attorney can really jump on that and say, that there was pressure here, that my guy is saying exactly what the cops want to hear, and they're leading him, and he's just kind of going along with it. These interrogations, they last hours and hours and hours, and it's a constant mental exhaustion that weighs on these people. And after a while, it's not uncommon for people to say, well, God, maybe I don't really remember exactly what happened. Maybe I don't know what I did that night. And a lot of times when that happens, a good law enforcement interrogator can jump on that and can start feeding information in and giving a little bit of detail here and there. And a person will say, yeah, I guess that is what happened. I guess that is what happened. So look for the prosecution to really hammer on that. See, he's agreeing to it. He's admitting it. He's guilt-ridden. He's unburdening himself to these law enforcement professionals, and look for the defense attorney to say, no. These law enforcement people are putting the words in his mouth, and he is so exhausted mentally and physically that he is just telling them what they want to hear.
All right, Paul, again, we get into, when we're looking at this, the psychological impacts of it. And one of the greatest interviewers that I used to work with was my tactical operations captain. And he always used to say, you got to be very, very careful in these interviews if you want to get it right, because people lie and say things and do things for all sorts of reasons that may look suspicious, but not necessarily have something to do with the murder, maybe covering up something else. What are your thoughts about that aspect of the statement that the defendant now, Eastman, gave to the police?
I think that's such an interesting point to bring up, because you have to understand from the law enforcement perspective that just because a defendant or a suspect is lying, that doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty. It just means the information that they're giving to law enforcement isn't true. And it may not be true for, as you said, a variety of reasons. Now, as I watched that clip and as I see Eastman, putting my defense attorney hat on, I'm far happier as a defense attorney with the way that he handled this, because he's basically saying, to the cops, I could tell you, but you're not going to believe me. And that to me indicates he's going to protest his own innocence here. He's going to tell them that he didn't have anything to do with it, but they're just not going to believe him. So why bother? And then when they're talking about Heather Frank, he has a breakdown. He's sobbing in his hands. That's the kind of emotional reaction as a defense attorney you want to see, so that you can convey to the jury, this is a guy who is so distraught about not only having lost this person that he cares about, but being a suspect in her death. That was really, I think, a far more powerful conveyance on his end.
All right, guys, great analysis. Thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break. They're still on break. Hopefully we'll be able to come back after that with some more courtroom testimony. In the meantime, we'll be right back.